Ukrainian president is quite young when you consider the complexities of international game of chess, this war politics, the complexities, the dynamics of global war politics. He is relatively young, 44 years old. That is young to some extent. Young, not just in terms of age, but also in terms of experience. He was an actor and a comedian who happens to find himself in the position as a president of a country in a strategic geographical region that is the battleground for multiple international powers, right? And to me, he appears to be a perfect candidate for mind control of certain nefarious global powers, right? Why did I say this? He was an actor, he was a comedian, and he is young. You know, when you're young, your mind is naive, your mind is straightforward, and you're less likely to be grounded in your decision making. I mean, he's trying his best. But I think this gentleman is under enormous pressure. Not just pressure, but mind control. I know a lot of people don't believe in mind control, but if you just do your due diligence, you discover that mind control program is a thing. It is a thing that has been going on for a long time. Mind control research has been going on by different governments around the world, particularly the technologically and the economically, militarily advanced societies have been practicing mind control, not just on the masses of the people, but also on individuals and groups of individuals, right? For the purpose of achieving the aims of the hidden rulers and the hidden controllers of our planet. I like to give a few recommendations. Read this book to gain more understanding of how mind control technology works. This book is a story of trauma and recovery. Military Mind Control by Dr. Colin Ross. Dr. Colin Ross wrote this book talking of military mind control. Read this book again. This is Transformation of America. This book, I think everybody should have this book in their archive, by Kathy O'Brien. She herself a victim of military mind control, because you need to understand how mind control programs, these advanced technological, advanced psychological, advanced neurological takeover of people's mind by certain techniques of the government in order to achieve their goals, in order to utilize certain individuals for their nefarious purposes. Presidents around the world are being placed under mind control. Political leaders are being placed under mind control. Individuals, corporate leaders, company leaders are being put under mind control in order to achieve certain objectives of those who rule the world. Read this book, Mind Control, World Control, the Encyclopedia of Mind Control. You see, you got to understand this thing called military mind control, how the elite control the minds of the people and utilize individuals for their global agenda. This book is written by Jim Keith, Keith, Where We Controlled. The subtitle is The Assassination of President Kennedy by Lincoln Lawrence. Very important book to understand the research that the Russian political military elite, as well as the United States of America's military elite, have done over the years to develop and advance techniques of mind controlling leaders and individuals around the world. Read this book, Overcoming Monarch Mind Control by Keith Baker. Overcoming Monarch Mind Control, and find out what is monarch mind control, the use of trauma to condition the minds of the people and to utilize individuals, people you think are normal leaders, people you see every day. They utilize these advanced techniques to hijack their mind and to use them as slaves to achieve objectives of certain nefarious, hideous groups who run the world. And that is why I believe looking at the dynamic situation unfolding in Ukraine and looking at the history of President, he appears to be under enormous control, enormous manipulation, enormous mind control by the forces that want to use him for their own evil expansionist purposes, right? It seems this country is caught up in the web, in the web of the fight of multiple international forces. And if the leadership in Ukraine is not very careful, these international forces will manipulate this country to destruction. Remember, they don't care. They don't care. They did that in Iraq. They lied to the population because the masses have short memory. We've all forgotten how they lied to the people using the media to manipulate the minds of the population into thinking that Saddam Hussein was the evil, was the Satan, the Middle East Persian Satan that needs to be eliminated for the world to get better. Many people forgot how they believed those lies that the media are perpetuating, but some of us can think independently of what the media is trying to instill into our minds. Do your own research. It is okay to think. It is okay not to follow the hive mind system of the population. It is okay to refuse the media to hijack and manipulate our visual and audio perceptions, because that is what is going on. You watch the televisions, you listen to the radio, you read the newspapers, and we are being constantly inundated with sad, tragic scenes and situations coming out of Ukraine. Houses collapsing, Russian military forces lined up, headed to Ukraine, people running helter-skelter, lines upon lines of vehicles, right, of people trying to get out of the country so that they will not face the potential deadly attack from the Russian military forces, right? And it appears to me that this country is under enormous manipulation by certain global forces whose interest is not to rescue or to help Ukraine, but to compete and to promote their own geopolitical, their own geostrategic interests, their own ideological interests, their own military expansionist agenda, their own regional expansionist agenda, right? So a lot of people, when you think of Cold War, the media and the elite manipulators are trying to make us believe that what you call the Cold War ended in the late 1980s, early 1990s, right? And therefore, Cold War ceases to exist, and the world now is coming together to hold hands and sing Kumbaya in a new global, universal human brotherhood and sisterhood, devoid of the darkness of Cold War era. But we know this is not the truth. Even though officially they told us that Cold War ended in the early 1990s, but what happens is that Cold War became even colder because it went deeper underground. There has always been this dialectical competition, this battle, this dualistic fight between the Eastern communism and the Western democratic capitalism, between the Eastern collectivism and the Western individualism has always been going on, and this was the ideologies, the socio-economic and political ideologies that led to the Cold War era. So what I'm trying to say is that what you see manifest in Ukraine is a residual effect of the darkness of Cold War, because Cold War is ongoing, right? Russia as a country is doing all she can to exert her influence on the world, to undermine particularly their arch rival, the United States of America, in terms of military technology, in terms of economy, right? The same way the The United States is fighting so hard, working assiduously to undermine Russia's potential military expansion or military interests, to sabotage their economy. So these countries are fighting in this infinite, endless, dualistic battle, and you have to remember that what they tell us in the public is often not what is going on. They are using the media to manipulate the masses. People forget that the government has a project or a program of mass mind control called Project Mockingbird. Project Mockingbird, right? A secret government mind control system of the masses using the media to hijack and reshape our perceptions, to reinterpret the history of the world to favor the ruling elite, the global elite. And that is what you see manifesting. As I say, people have short memory. We've forgotten how they use the media to manipulate the minds of the whole earth to believe that Iraq was evil in order for them to go and invade Iraq. Remember that what they tell us often in the media are not truth. A tiny bit of truth and a lot of lies, because they want your emotions, they want your consent, because this global Luciferian evil satanic elite understood that if they embark on certain nefarious actions without capturing the minds and the interest of the people, without bringing the population on their side, they will not be able to carry out their nefarious agenda, because there will be mass revolt. So the first thing they do is the use of the media through multiple government secret programs like Project Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, to hijack the media and to constantly inundate your minds with information that is designed particularly to manipulate your mind and to reinterpret your perception, to change your worldview to align to that of the global elite, right? So Cold War has not ended. So what is going on in Ukraine are multiple powers, multiple global military forces, multiple intelligence agencies fighting for their own geostrategic military expansionist interest. But if you listen to the media, especially from the perspective of the Western media, what do you get? You are likely going to form the opinion that what is going on in Ukraine, what we see morphing, emerging in Ukraine, is but a case of the old communist Satan, old communist devil, Russia, right? Trying to exert her communist imposition on a sovereign nation, trying to annex a sovereign, independent nation of a people who are just living their lives, being happy, and now they are under invasion. Yeah, that is one of the truth. That is part of the truth. But that is not the entirety of the truth. And that's why I say that we have to get off the television and this mass behavior manipulation to conduct independent research to understand the history of the world and who controls the world. There are people who control the world, who control your perception, control your feelings and your emotions. And if you are the one who get all your information, news, remember, television is about misinformation, miseducation, hijacking and reshaping your perception to align to certain agenda, and it works. So a lot of people worship at the high temple of televisions in their room. One of the greatest tool of cognitive hijacking, of mind control in this world. A lot of people don't know where to find the truth or to interpret the truth. So whatever is projected on the screen of their television is what they see as the truth, right? And we know for sure, based on psychological studies, based on neurological information, neurological scientific studies, that when we spend a lot of time in front of television. The frequencies emitting from television can paralyze our thinking process by subjecting our minds to something called the alpha brain state. The alpha brain state. And when your brain wave descends to alpha state, you are like in a hypnotic sleep state. And people, the television programmer, that's why they call it program, can literally and directly insert knowledge into your psyche, put thoughts and ideas into your mind, because your mind has become very suggestible when your brain wave descends to the alpha state. You are sleeping, even though you think you're awake. You think you're analyzing politics, you're analyzing world history, but your brain, your mind is in a sleep state. So they are programming your mind. That is why it is okay to read a fucking book, read a true fucking history of the world. Go and find out the history of Soviet Russia, the history of Cold War, and study core data, right? And get away from these stupid, idiotic demagogues that are programming our minds in the television. I know a lot of people don't want to think. It is a hard work to think. So we want other people to tell us what is going on. We want to look up to the sugar daddy government to instruct us on what to believe, what to think, and what not to think. And that's how people function actually in real life. They can't just think for themselves, because thinking is a hard job. Am I going to do all those research? You're going to take years. Of course, if you want to fucking know how the world works, then you get off your butt and do core research. Because if you watch television and that becomes the only conduit to gain knowledge, to gain information, your mind is fucked. And that is what I say, that what is going on in Ukraine, we are being manipulated. Yes, they make us to believe that Russia is the only identified enemy here. That's not true. Russia is one of the problem. Is it right for Russia to invade a sovereign nation? No, that is ill. That is sick. That is sickening. But what is happening now is that the forces of transatlantism, what you call the Transatlantic Alliance or the Transatlantic Treaty. Transatlantism is this bilateral military, economic, political alliance between, on the one hand, North America and Canada, and on the other hand, the different countries of Europe. So they have this thing going on for a long time because they're all European descendant, what you call the Anglo-Europeanism, right? So they have formed a pact, right? A brotherhood, sisterhood pact called transatlantism, right? And we see that NATO, the formation of NATO in 1949 was a spillover, right, of transatlantic beliefs, believing that Anglo-Europeans have to come together to maintain more alliance in order to defend their interest. So 4 years after World War II ended, they formed NATO, and NATO is run by military intelligence here. Many people in the United States of America are very skeptical of NATO. That is true, and you don't blame them, because if you do research, you see who formed NATO, the reason and the agendas for why NATO was formed. You see that it is leading towards global power consolidation. So why NATO is vehemently trying to quote-unquote help Ukraine, no, what is happening is that the forces of transatlantic elite, right, are trying to make sure that they maintain geographical, military, political, technological influence over not just the entire Europe, but the entire Eurasia, as well as the entire world. And that is what they call gradualism, trying to consolidate political power for their own nefarious end. It is the same thing that Russia is doing that NATO is doing. Remember, NATO was formed in Washington, D.C. in America. So my reasonable assumption is that NATO is also under the CIA Pentagon control. And Russia and the United States they are arch rival, right? Arch enemies, right? So the US has found it, intelligences within US government found it convenient to utilize this organization to make sure that Russia is neutralized by more widespread European alliance. We know that after World War II and after the era of Cold War, there was a decision by the US government, right, to make sure that Russia is completely neutralized, completely paralyzed. And they did this by making sure that the former satellite states of the Russian Confederation severed their alliance from Russia in order to plug their new alliance to the European forces. And that is why they are campaigning for some of these old communist satellite states to switch to European Union. Do you understand that? They want some of these old communist states, right? Ukraine used to be a core communist state, right? So they want to make sure that that country switches alliance to both NATO and the United States. So they too are trying to appropriate, some of these countries to be part of their control. Not because they love the country, forget it, they don't love the country. It's about power dynamics. It's about shifting global alliance, because this elite plan 100 years to the future. Very intelligent people. That's why they're called elite. Very smart people who have military power in their possession. They have finances, money, economy in their possession. They have technological know-how in their possession, and they can see the future better than any one of us can. So, and now they are using the media to make it believe that they are altruistically trying to help Ukraine. No, they want to appropriate Ukraine. And that's why I say that Vladimir Zelensky appears to be naive. He is young, he's dynamic, he's eloquent, he's charming, he's likable, but he's a perfect candidate for the global elite mind control. Read this book, Full Spectrum Dominance. Very researched book, Full Spectrum Dominance. It's a totalitarian democracy in the New World Order. Many people in the United States believe that NATO is a military wing of the elites who are campaigning for global consolidation of power for a new world system or for a new world order. Remember, NATO is a vicious military elite. It is military elitism that runs NATO, and they also have expansionist philosophy. Don't forget that, because in the midst of all these humanitarian emotional reactions, which is understandable, we are all humans and we don't want to see another human being suffer. But sometimes we have to go beyond these emotional manipulations by the media, by the elite, to look at situations factually. The world does not work according to how we feel. You know how I feel? I feel lions should not eat antelopes. Lions should not eat gazelles. That's my feeling. That's not the actual way the world works. So it is better to analyze the world factually than to dwell in the peripheral, in the soft ground of our emotions, because by doing that, we are constantly being manipulated. People have short memory, because people are spontaneous, instinctive. They react for the moment. Once you show them images on the television, they don't think about any other thing. That's how they react. They don't do research. They don't go back in time to see the residual antecedents, right, of what is leading to the situation on the ground. And that is what we should do to maintain a methodic skepticism. Doubt everything you see in television. Do more research. Spend more time conducting research. Because if the world population is doing this, we are less likely to be manipulated by these satanists, by this evil satanic elite. Less likely, but they know that we don't think. And that is why in the midst of global worldwide pandemic, as the world is combating one of the deadliest viruses that humanity has ever known, one of the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, put out a book. People are struggling, battling, trying to combat COVID-19, and then he released a book titled COVID-19, The Great Reset. And in that book, the elite told you their map for the future, their blueprint for the future, what they intend to do. How many people who consider themselves to be educated, to be literate, has even known about this book or cared to pick up a copy of this book and read? Because there's nothing that these people want to do that they will not directly or indirectly communicate to the people. But then they're making fun of you because they know you're not going to read them. They know you don't understand things. That's why they call you the consumers, the masses, the sheep, the cows. Because they know you cannot think. You go based on media emotional responses, and your emotions are being manipulated. So if you read the book by Klaus Schwab, Klaus Schwab is very important, and that his book is very important because of his caliber of a person. He is one person that could be considered to be a global elite, a mouthpiece of the powers that be, and he released a book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. What are they fucking resetting? What are they resetting? He told you, he told the world, but nobody pays attention because we want to listen to the sugar daddy government, to tell us what they believe, like retarded idiots. That's why the reason we have reason is so that we use our reason. But many people are not using their reason, right? That is why I encourage people to get off television, learn to do core research, because the demagogues, most of the people who are television broadcasters, are under MK Ultra mind control themselves. Remember, through Project Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, CIA has many of their agents in media, not just CIA, but other global elites. And they are the ones who are feeding you information that the government wants you to understand. And then you think you're educated. Give me a break. Give me a fucking break. So this is what is going on in the world. Russia is guilty, but Russia is not the only culprit here. There are other dark global secret intelligence agencies working for their own expansionist agenda. They all have the same interest that Russia has. And why should Russia be concerned about the expansion of NATO into all parts of Europe and Eurasia? Because the agenda of NATO is a world domination. You're going to say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory because you don't fucking do research. If you do research, you know it is true. Their philosophy, their agenda is a military global presence, a strong military force. And many researchers will tell you it is to consolidate all powers in the world for them to manifest the new regime, the new totalitarian regime. Get this book and read. I like to give a lot of recommendations, so you don't just think I'm just making stuff up, right? Read this book, Who Controls the World? Who Controls the World? Very good book to have and understand the power dynamics in this world. Anglo-American establishment, the transatlantism, right? The European/American power, right? Alliance that led to the creation of stuff you call NATO today for certain global domination. So, as I said, you think that some are evil towards Ukraine and some are angel towards Ukraine. All of them have the same agenda. Is domination, is control, is expansion. If any country joins NATO, it means that country becomes under the control of NATO in military elite, right? That is domination. That is domination. So it's not freedom. So this book is an old book, but it's very important for those who like to do some studies. Studies in international relations and foreign policy. Old book. Studies in international relation and foreign policy. Subtitle is Military Aid and Counter-Revolution in the Third World by Wolpin. Wolpin is the name of the writer of this book. It is an old book. Another book that presents a history of the world that we are not being taught in school is this, A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn, even though he seems to be leaning towards liberal ideologies, but I think he is a good researcher. Read his book, Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. So I am going to read a page, maybe a section from this book titled Full Spectrum Dominance, totalitarian democracy in the New World Order. They are telling you about the emergence of a New World Order. What is happening in Ukraine is the consolidation of power by NATO forces, by NATO elite, by NATO intelligentsia. They want to gain, they want to annex ideologically, militarily, most of the European countries and also expand to Eurasia and dominate. It is the same thing that Russia is fighting. So none of these people are angels. They all have similar expansionist interests. They don't like Ukraine. They understand that the leadership in Ukraine is pretty naive. And as I said, President Zelensky appears to be a perfect candidate for mind control by this global elite, right? So this is what the author of this book is William Engdahl. William Engdahl, Full Spectrum Dominance, Totalitarian Democracy. You see, totalitarianism and democracy does not normally go along, but because they trick you and make you believe it is freedom, so they are mixing their so-called democracy with their totalitarian world agenda. So that is what this guy is trying to explain, the world realignment of power. That is part of what Klaus Schwab was telling you in the book COVID-19, The Great Reset. Could you imagine, as the world is just trying to recover from COVID-19, from this darkness that have lasted for 2 years, everything shut down. Now the world is about to emerge from this pandemic, global pandemic, and now our attention is being drawn to potential crisis in Europe, potential crisis that many analysts are even saying it might lead to global world conflict, right? So open your eyes and know that the population of the world is being manipulated by few cryptic elites that you have no idea. That is why I say get off television and do some fucking research. So I'm going to read just a portion of this book. I think this portion is very important because even though this book was written before the crisis we see happening in Europe, but this author pinpointed exactly what the problem is. He said the subtitle of this page is The Construction of Russia, the Ultimate Prize. That is the ultimate prize of the forces of Atlantism, or the Atlantic forces, or NATO, or the United States. So they too are aggressors in some way. He said, for obvious military and political reasons, Washington could not admit openly that since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, its strategic goal has been to dismember or deconstruct Russia, thereby gaining effective control of its huge oil and gas resources. Good researcher, somebody who actually thinks, right? And he continues, however, the Russian bear still had formidable military means, even though somewhat dilapidated, and she still had nuclear teeth. Beginning in the 1990s, Washington initiated a deliberate process of bringing former satellite Soviet states into not only the European Union, but also into a Washington-dominated NATO. I told you NATO is controlled by the Pentagon, by the American intelligence, and it is an extended arm of the American government to control and dominate Europe. They are working in symbiotic alliance. They have this symbiosis, they help each other, and that is why I talked about the forces of transatlantism. It continues, by 2004, Poland and Czech Republic, Hungary, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia were all in NATO, with the Republic of Georgia being groomed to join. Do you get what is going on? Do you get it? So what is happening is that the transatlantic alliance, North America and Europe, which is being led by this nefarious elitist military wing called NATO, is expanding their influence, their political influence over the whole world. And by the time they conquer Europe and Eurasia, it's probably going to be Africa or South America next. They will consolidate global power for domination, not because they are democracy at all, but because of their own instinct to maintain global totalitarian government. That is what we have to wake up to, because as I say, they've manipulated you to agree with them. They're manipulating you with all these pictures they are sending in the medias to solicit your humanitarian impulse, your humanitarian sympathy, and it is working in the favor, because now the global population looking at Russia as the only Satan, as the only evil. But that is a mind manipulation. There are more global forces that are competing to annex more territory, more ideological territory, more political territory for their own control. I think I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to make this longer. It's getting to an hour. So open your eyes, as we say here, elevate your mind beyond the three-dimensional cognition. Remember, many people around you just watch television. They cannot do research. They can't go a step further, right, to find out facts, because they just want to sit down. Somebody tell me what to believe. I need the government to tell me what to believe. I need to listen to the demagogue, the stupid, cabbage-headed idiots in the media to bombard our intellect, our reasons with their demagoguery, and to mind control us towards aligning our minds, our good intentions to the nefarious activities of the global elite.